Hello, I'm Paula Forrester, and welcome to Paula Forrester's Mysterious Ways. Do you believe that healing energy can be transferred from one person to another, even if they're not there? My first guest is a Reiki master and healer and occupational therapist who founded Balancing for the number 4 Life in 2008. She offers natural healing to correct the damaging effects of stress on your health and wellness. She's an expert on Chickadin, Reiki, and we'll be discussing their amazing healing energies. My second guest, live from Missouri, and here to discuss the history and fascinating world of the all-time Ozark mountain magic, is my sister, Halina. So please welcome my first guest, Ann Bentzen, Reiki master and practitioner of Chickadin, located in Pleasantville, New York. Welcome, Ann.
Hi, Paula. It's wonderful to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Tell us, what is Reiki?
Okay, Reiki is a light touch, hands-on healing art that originated in Japan in the early 1920s. The purpose of Chickadin Reiki is to help restore health and harmony of body, mind, and spirit.
Is there a difference between Eastern and Western Reiki?
Yes, there is. I am currently a Shiankaku, which is an assistant teacher with the Chickadin Reiki Institute in Kyoto, Japan. I first learned Reiki in the early 2000s, and at that time I learned the Western style, and I did achieve the Reiki master level and taught Western Reiki, but I don't teach Usui style Reiki anymore. I have since 2019, when I was granted Shiankaku, I have been exclusively teaching Chickadin Reiki. Chickadin is a word in Japanese that means directly transmitted from teacher to student. It means that the teachings have not been altered in any way and is the original teaching passed down. So with Chickadin Reiki, there is no Western influence. And the Chickadin Reiki Institute was actually founded in 2000 by a woman, Chiyoko Yamaguchi, who had received her initial trainings directly from a student of Mikao Usui, the founder of Reiki. In 1938, Dr. Chihiro Hayashi sensei. And so all of the teachings that are part of the Chickadin Reiki Institute today stem directly from the teachings of Dr. Chihiro Hayashi.
Tell me a little bit more about Balancing for Life.
Okay. Balancing for Life is my company, which I started in 2008, devoted to using Reiki and also working with some other subtle energies to support restoration and transformation and healing for people of various issues, whatever they come to me with, for healing body, mind, and spirit. My interest in Reiki actually stemmed from being introduced to energy itself back in the 1990s. As an occupational therapist, I had worked with autistic children and children with special needs the majority of my career. And I got to a point where I was disappointed. I felt that my training was incomplete. There was something lacking, and I didn't know what it was. And I stumbled upon the work of Carolyn Mace, and in her book, Anatomy of the Spirit, I became acutely aware of this other world of energy, which in my traditional training as an occupational therapist, I knew nothing about. So subsequently, I have evolved in learning energy and also learning to see the world through the eyes of energy as an energetic being. And it's been a process that I'm continuing to learn every day. I learn from my students, I learn from my clients. There is never an end to learning more about Reiki and what we can do as energy beings.
Now, you say you can heal people from a distance. If Reiki is a hands-on method, how is that done?
Okay, what you're asking about is the information from the Okuden course. Okay, I am teaching the Shoden course, which is the direct hands-on healing. Distance Reiki was taught as an emergency technique when someone was not available to receive a direct treatment. During World War II, Japanese women would do distance Reiki to send to their husbands who were fighting in World War II. And it has continued to be of useful even today, particularly with the pandemic. There's been a tremendous amount of remote healing, distance healing being given by Jikin and Reiki practitioners, and also, I'm sure, Western Reiki practitioners to help those in need because it was not possible to be in physical contact with them.
I see. Now, where is your space located, first of all?
Okay, my space is located at 25 Broadway in Pleasantville. It's on the second floor, Suite 101.
Okay. You offer Bach flower essences and crystalline grips for your home and office. What are these and how are they used?
Okay, Bach flower essences were developed by Dr. Edward Bach in England, and they access the high vibrational energy of flowers and plants to support transformation of unconscious negative behavioral patterns. And it very similarly working like with homeopathy. It's it's the signature vibration of those plants that facilitates an energetic shift in individuals. The crystalline grids are available for clients that wish to shift the energy in their home or their office. I have there's a dental office in Scarsdale that I've created grids for, and they found it very helpful for their clients and also for increasing the prosperity of the practice as well.
I see. Okay. You deal with trauma, emotional, and mental distress as well.
Mm-hmm.
How has your work as an occupational therapist help you heal people?
I worked with physical disabilities. I didn't work in the mental health field. There are two distinct branches of occupational therapy. All of my work was either in a physical rehabilitation hospital or in a school. But we are all trained with activity analysis to assess what types of activity would be calming, what types of activity would be, as far as stimulating, depending upon what the issues that the client is dealing with. Now, in Jikin and Reiki, and Reiki are very effective in helping clients who have anxiety, depression, who have insomnia, because the body in today's very fast-paced society, where we have so much mental energy going on that we don't really know how to turn it off. And the wonderful thing about the flow of Reiki through the body is it helps the body to relax. And in that deep relaxation, the body is able to begin healing itself. Okay, the body is very intelligent, and through the Reiki actually facilitates a detoxification process to help the body heal and release some of these emotional energies that have been embedded in the bodily tissues, perhaps for years.
When I was in the hospital for one of my many back surgeries, they offered Reiki to me. And Reiki is now being offered in hospitals all over the place. What do you feel about that?
I think it's wonderful. It's often the first time that people have an experience of Reiki, and it's many people once they learn Reiki like to go and volunteer to offer Reiki in hospitals, to offer Reiki in nursing homes, even working with animals, animals that are recovering from surgery, animals that have been abused. Animals love Reiki. So Reiki is really available and can be widely used as a free service for people.
When I had a store, we had a Reiki master come in to do animal Reiki healing, and we had a line around the block of people that wanted to bring their pets in for Reiki.
Mm-hmm.
So it was quite interesting. Another thing you deal with is grief. How would you deal with grief with Reiki?
Okay. With Reiki, I want to specifically just mention that with Jikiden Reiki, one of the things the practitioner learns is they learn how to intuitively feel what Makai Usui, the founder of Reiki, describes as byosin. Byosin is what we would term in English sick energy. So you can feel different levels of sick energy in the body. And when a person is grieving, you're going to feel a lot of that over the heart. Okay, so with Jikiden Reiki, you will treat that area for as long as it is required. You don't move your hands all over the body. You just always treat the head, and you treat the problem area that the client is having difficulties with, in this case, grief. So that is like a major difference for Jikiden Reiki versus the Western style Reiki.
Now, in any New Age store you go into, there are chakra stones that are used a lot of times with Reiki. Do you work with chakra stones, or do you feel it's unnecessary?
I feel that it is not a part of Jikiden Reiki. It is totally separate. Reiki is a complete practice. I am very familiar with crystals, and they have their use. But for an effective Jikiden Reiki practice does not require the use of crystals. It does not require the use of rituals for protection either, because we believe that when Reiki flows through us, we are emanating very high vibration, and that vibration alone is a vibration of love. It's very clearing. Another thing that I just want to share quickly is there is a concept that is discussed in Jikiden Reiki called kototama. And kototama refers to word spirit. And the Jikiden Reiki, the Reiki principles that were passed down from Usui Sensei are actually repeated out loud in Japanese. And there is a vibration, the spirit, the word energy of these words, that you can feel when you say the Japanese principles in Japanese and you hold your hands together in gasho. Your hands get warm. You feel the energy running through you. And this is the energy that gets translated to clients when they receive a session.
You say you have an upcoming Shodan workshop coming up in Holmes, New York. What's Shodan, and tell me about your workshop.
Okay. Shodan is what a Western style Reiki would refer to as level 1. It is the beginning class. It is where all students learn the direct hands-on practice of Jikiden Reiki. They learn the most authentic history available of Reiki. They learn the history of Chiyoko Yamaguchi Sensei, who with her son Tadao Sensei founded the Jikiden Reiki Institute in Japan. in response to getting exposed to Western Reiki masters that had come over to Japan in hopes of meeting and connecting. And they realized that there were significant differences between how Reiki was being practiced in the rest of the world and how Chiyoko Yamaguchi had been taught by Hayashi Sensei. And this was the impetus for them creating the Chikitin Reiki Institute in 2000, was to maintain the original teachings, not to mix Reiki with anything else, and not wanting the original teachings to be changed in any way. So does that answer your question?
Yes, it does. It does.
Okay.
So you're going to be at the Awaken Fair on November
Oh,
21st.
yes. I will be there all day on the 21st. I just want to go back. The Shodan Retreat begins Friday evening, this Friday, the 12th, and runs through about mid-afternoon on Sunday.
How would somebody get a hold of you if they wanted to attend?
The best way they can either contact me at my website, balancingforlife.com, but the best way is to actually reach out to www.homescamp.org, where they can register directly. All the information for the class is on that website. You get extensive supervised training. There are 3 activations that every student receives in the course of the weekend, and they learn everything they need to know and will feel proficient in being able to go out and provide Reiki to someone else immediately upon completing the class.
Very nice. Very nice. And you will be at the Awaken Fair as well.
Yes, I'll be there at the Awaken Fair. I have about 5 or 6 people that have already signed up. You can go to, I think it's awakenfair.com. You can pre-register and book a session with a healer or a reader. And I think it's a slight discount. And also you'll have a discount on your admission. The fair runs from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. And you can sign up for a 15-minute or a 30-minute session.
I see. Thank you, Anne, for being with us tonight. This was very educational, informational. Good luck with your workshop, and good luck with your business and with your healing and energy work. I think it's wonderful that you do that. And I may be at the Awaken Fair, so I'll stop by and say hello.
Oh, I would love to see you. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed the opportunity to introduce your audience to Chikitin Reiki, and I hope people will be inspired to come and learn these original teachings from Japan.
Thank you, Anne.
Okay, take care.
Take care. My next guest is also my sister. She's lived in Missouri for 15 years, but has been traveling back and forth to Missouri for the last 30 years. And she's always had an interest in the New Age, folklore, mysticism of the Ozark Mountains. And there's Ozark Mountain magic that has existed since the 20s and 30s, and probably before that, when the people started migrating from the European countries to Missouri. So please welcome Halina, my sister.
Hi, nice to be with you today.
Hello, Halina.
Hi.
I feel like I just talked to you yesterday.
You did. All good, all good. Now, there's a fabulous history down here. It's a very old history. When generations, as you mentioned, of immigrants started coming through the United States and traveling south and west, they were opening up new territories, and land was cheap in Missouri. When the Oklahoma land rush was on, people traveled a lot from Appalachia and the upper Midwest coming through Missouri to try and get to Oklahoma. What most people don't know understand, it took sometimes generations to get across country. These were incredibly difficult trips, and the poverty was extreme. And so towns in Europe would have brokers that would recruit who wants to go to America. They would offer passage. They would get them into one of the port cities in Connecticut or New York, or even up through New Orleans, Louisiana. And then you booked passage inland to your family who might be there already or had money available to buy the dollar an acre land in Oklahoma. And so in southern Missouri, especially, this is pretty rough, low hill country. There's no running water, there's no electricity, even in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. The roads are pretty much impassable unless you've got a good mule. And so when people settled and they ran out of money and stayed. So there's pockets primarily down on the Missouri-Arkansas border that are Scotch-Irish. There are towns that are very Polish. There are towns that are very German. There are Swedish towns, and they all came with their lores and their legends and blended them with some of the local lores and legends of the indigenous people. And so indigenous to my area were the Osage Indians and the Bow Indians. And they had a highly organized religion with a spiritual hierarchy, very definite ceremonies, charms, prayers, very extensive multi-day ceremonies. And that did blend with the beliefs and the practices of the locals that came down into the Ozarks. And there was no mass communication. And so what you learned locally is what you learned locally. And then in that tradition, the women were primarily the healers in European culture. They were home. They learned healing and they learned herbal arts just like they learned how to cook. They learned how to boil an herb or to steep an herb or to put it into an emulsion and how to handle the herbs. And just like food recipes were handed down through the females generation's generation, the successful herbalists kept their best recipes to the family and created a lot of the herbal remedies that carried with them. And these women became very, very important in the towns. There was no organized medical system, even in the 40s and early 50s.
And you called them grannies. Tell me more about that.
They're called granny women. They were generally women who had been practicing as healers since they were little kids. They learned from their grandmothers. They learned to pick herbs, identify herbs, create the potions, worked with mom, worked with grandma, worked with great grandma. And they went and attended to the sick with them, and they became healers in training. And so what they did is kind of in the same vein that Reiki does. They didn't just come in and drop off herbs. They sat, they talked, they visited, they stayed with the person for extended periods of time. If the woman was in labor for a day or two, the granny woman was with them for a day or two. They just didn't deliver the baby on. They felt that it was very, very wrong to leave a woman and a newborn alone. Never, never. She needs to have a cadre of other women around her to help her in this whole process. And they became a support system for weeks after the birth. And as medicine came into the Ozarks, it was majorly male dominated. There became that rift between real medicine and granny medicine. But the grannies served a purpose. The doctors would come in if the woman went to the hospital to deliver, and they delivered baby after baby after baby and did not clean up between deliveries. So they were basically a dirty, filthy, bloody mess the granny women went and attended to a woman. They were used to cooking and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning. And they cleaned up after each birth. They cleaned the bed. They cleaned the woman. They cleaned their instruments just like you wash your pots and pans. They cleaned and they put clean sheets all around the woman to keep dust and dirt from blowing onto the bed. And so they were gradually phased out with modern medicine. And then the United States never recognized midwifery like Europe did. Midwifery practiced through the 50s and 60s extensively in England. It was a part of their medical practice. And so they offered talk and healing and staying with the family and continuing to work with the woman and trying to provide any pain control that they could. Now, back in the 20s, 30s, and even 40s and early 50s, you could get morphine at the local store. You could get laudanum. You could get a number of things that we don't do anymore. So if a woman was really in horrific pain, they could administer a dose of morphine. But there was no other pain management available. The granny woman also, if the woman was not able to deliver the baby, she would be in charge of saving the baby or saving the woman, and she had to do the procedure to remove the baby. And so they had a very important part in saving somebody in that situation. Kind of to that tradition, there is a tradition of the lost child. Kids died back in the day. If they didn't die at birth, they died before they were 5 years old. They died of the flu. They died of strep throat. They died of cuts and infections. And the lost child was called a tatterdemalion. And these were not bad spirits. They were the spirit of the child who had died, who was lost to the family. And they were allowed to stay about 30 days with the living. And they were considered the world messengers. So they came and they visited the family and the extended family with what they needed to do. There was something that was left unfinished that they're going to try and help them fix. So they were good spirits in trying to stay and help and identify what was wrong. And after 30 days, they became part of the earth and they traveled on to their afterlife. And so it's all part of this tradition to help a person deal with the grief of losing a child. And so there's a grief management associated with the granny women and the lost children and everything that was happening back in the day.
Now, going back to granny women for a minute,
Yeah.
those of us that are old enough to remember the Beverly Hillbillies, there was
Oh,
Granny
yeah.
Clampett. Was she a granny?
She was a granny woman, and they're still on TV if you AMC channel or something like that. She was their town's healer, and she would always talk about getting her yerba basket, and she had to mix up her potions, and she would make love spells and things like that. Granny Clampett always did good things, and she was always suspicious of real doctors because she did the doctoring. And
the rheumatism
was,
medicine.
sorry?
And the rheumatism medicine.
Rheumatism medicine, yeah, was very popular. And what grows wild in the areas are medicines that do relieve pain. Sassafras and red cedar mixed into a tea are supposed to help reduce arthritis. Elderberries, I grow elderberries wild here. They're great, but they have a detoxifying agent and they have a mild agent to help reduce some inflammation. There were a lot of things in Granny's little picnic basket that were yerba herbs, and she would go visiting Beverly Hills highfalutin people, and she would offer to mix them up something. She was always trying to fix. You remember that? But the granny were always good. They were not. They never did bad spells. They never hurt. They were the healers. They listened to you. They didn't judge you. They tried to make things better. And if someone had done something evil to you, they would be in charge of finding someone who would help relieve that. So they would get someone called a goomer doctor. And the goomer doctors would come and kind of exorcise the bad spirit. They wouldn't necessarily know who did it to you, but you weren't getting better. You were still depressed. You were still anxious. You were still sick, something. And the goomer doctor would provide the support and the prayers and the ritual to remove the bad effect that was making you ill. The power doctors were the ones that used charms. They would come to your house or you would go to them, and they would have special charms, special prayers that they would say to try and relieve you of whatever ailed you. The root doctors are more in the African tradition. That would be in the very southern Ozarks. The African tradition didn't get up to the Missouri-Arkansas border much, but it was very active on the Louisiana-Missouri border. And there were some very famous verbal root doctors and hoodoo women that actually practiced healing and practiced psychic readings. One of the very famous one was Auntie Di. And Auntie Di was born a slave. As a slave, she did readings for rich people, poor people, white people, non-white people, everybody, and very powerful people would not make a move without her blessing, her reading, and would frequently go to her for special prayers and charms to make sure that their family stayed healthy, the business deal went well, which business deal to choose. And so it was a very powerful thing to have a hoodoo woman that was in your area. Not hoodoo, they were hoodoo women. But
Hoodoo
they
is
were
root work.
Yeah, root work. And so that's more in
Root,
the African.
root, not root.
It's Missouri. So there's a very deep history here. Just some of the things do to decorate houses. There's a Missouri, Arkansas tradition of the haint, Haint, which is a good spirit that you would paint or decorate on your door to keep evil spirits out. Well, what do we do now in fall? We put up little scarecrows, we meet ghosts, we put dolls up, we put all kinds of things up to welcome people in, not necessarily to keep evil out, but the whole tradition of the art and the charms and some of the rituals have become art. They've become standard in our culture, with most people not knowing the origins. And so
now you were telling me that a lot of this was passed down through people's storytelling because they had no entertainment at night. Tell me more about that.
Well, you're very remote. For me to walk to my neighbor's house, if I want to walk across, not through the road, it's hilly, it's rocky, and people then would be miles apart. There was no entertainment, and a lot of the Christian religions that were here did not allow, music for entertainment, only for church. They did not allow dancing. They did not allow those kind of social get-togethers. So the social get-togethers would be storytelling and the passing down of the legends, the stories, possibly some of the cures that you could use. Some of the legends down here, as far as the bad guys to tell a good scary story, was always incredible entertainment. We have a Wizard of Oto here, OTO, who was sort of a mystical, never knew who he really was, claimed to be a doctor that healed a lot of people. Well, we're not sure what he gave people, or he had really good pain control management medications. No one ever knew who he was and what happened to him. There's an evil blue man that appears in the woods. And this is all heavily, heavily wooded here, that would chase you with sticks if you were getting into his territory. They would tell stories about if you ever have a white horse come in front of you, that means death is coming if you see it. A lot of folks down here will not own a white horse. If you go to a riding stable down here, they will not own a white horse in their string. A white horse is very bad luck. So all these were just generated and generated. When Jeb up the street came home and a white horse crossed in front of him, he never made it home. And then people would blame the death of the white horse, cast an evil spirit. Maybe it was the blue man. There's a legend of a howler, which is sort of a bear dog creature that would get you in the middle of the night. So it's a great story to keep your kids home at night, right? And so those stories, there's a lot of the stories that are amazing, better than Stephen King. But this was entertainment back in the day. They did psychic readings. They read tea leaves if they came from that culture. They did all those things, and it was socially acceptable at the time. It was not devil driven. They were not conjuring up evil spirits. Most of it was getting a hold of someone who had already passed on. People died early. People died hard. Death was very, very common. And it was a every week occurrence that you knew something happened to somebody. That was the life back then. It was hard. So,
You told me an interesting story of men that would go up on the roof. Tell me more about that.
Oh, well, it was, of course, the women were in charge of the healing. The women were in charge of birthing the babies, cooking, keeping everything together. And so if a man wanted a boy child, of course, he couldn't practice magic openly. But there was a magical ceremony, I guess you'd call it, where he knew what prayer to say, but you had to go on the roof of your house to do it. Well, he couldn't be caught on the roof of his house practicing magic because he was a man. So he often took a bundle of shingles and a hammer, and a lot of men repaired roofs during childbirth times because they thought that would make the child become a boy. And so, all the things. Yeah. They were the heavy lifters. You needed boys. So, but it was interesting. There were some men who practiced magic. They were mostly the power doctors. They were the root doctors. They were the goomer doctors. The ones that actually drew evil out tended to be some women, but there were more men down here anyway, and they had a part in it. And so, and this was all kept private because after all, they were all Christians. And so there was a condemnation of it. There was not witch trials down here in the 20s and 30s and 40s. It was just part of the culture that everybody kind of just knew it was there, looked the other way, and it went on. There's a lot published on Ozark history if you want to get into reading about the herbal medicines and some of the things that were discussed in the 20s and 30s. One of the most prominent books is by Vince Randolph. It was published in 1947. And if you read it, keep in mind it's with the perspective and the morals and the attitude of 1947. And he tried to do a comprehensive history of magic and folklore in the Ozarks. And it's a darn good start to understanding what it was like down here. And in the midst of abject poverty, this is how people dealt with very difficult lives. Kept them going.
Right. Now, you have two spirit logs in your home. And
Yes.
Anthony, if we could pull up pictures of those. Um, Spirit logs were logs that were placed under babies' cradles, and the spirit of the energy that was going to protect the child came up through the wood carver. Tell me more
Yeah.
about that.
Well, when the baby was born back in the 20s, 30s, and 40s, the local wood carver would come who had seeing ability, the gift ability. He would look at the baby and he would predict what the personality of that baby was going to be as it grew up. So, was the baby going to be a joker, somebody very serious, somebody mean? And so we bought these years ago. Silver Dollar City down here had an amazing wood carving shop. And we bought two of these spirit logs that look, they've got pretty serious faces. This one is very watchful. He's like very alert. He's like looking out for you. So we got these after our kids were born. But again, they're a beautiful piece of art that came out of tradition. And if you have the idea that your child is going to be watchful, protective, you might raise them more that way, to be watchful and protective, and take care of their families and things like that. But it was the male's contribution to the magical prediction of how this baby could develop. Now, things could always go wrong when they got older and they went bad, but this was what the capability of the child could be. This would be your best self.
Mm-hmm.
And you
Now,
can still buy.
You talked a lot about good spirits. What about bad spirits? Were they those that wandered through the Ozark Mountains?
The bad spirits came from people that were declared black witches. And back in the day, in the 20s, 30s, and even before that, a lot of very eccentric women were just tagged as evil because they might really be hallucinating. They might really be ill. They would threaten people. They were mean people. And just, we've all met really mean people that threaten to hurt and kill people now. Well, back in the day, people believed that they could project that energy into someone and hurt them remotely. And so all of these charms and prayers and ceremonies and healing in and roots and calling the Goomer doctors in were to not let this affect you and not let it hurt you. And so it was in that tradition that people were not welcome in the towns. And most of them didn't last very long. It was a very closed community. I mean, they moved on, or they were moved out, but they didn't go to the trials and the hangings like they did back in Salem. But people believed that there were some evil charms and there were evil incantations. And one of them was, if this person got onto your property and buried something on your path into your house or in front of your front door, and you stepped on it, then all the evil they wanted to pass on to you would pass on to you. Well, and if that happened suddenly and you suddenly fell ill, you would suspect that this person had done this to you, or someone out there was trying to get you, and you would immediately try and find a Goomer doctor to remove it. You get a hang door to keep it out. If you don't let the evil in, they can't come into your house. You have to welcome them in. And so there's as many protections as there are evil spells. And so it made it, yeah.
Well, Halina, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Yes.
It's a pleasure seeing you.
Okay. And if people are interested, start with the Vince Randolph book. If you look at the herbal medicines, there is an excellent book that is published by one of the pharmaceutical companies beware of what you're taking, because some of them can severely interact with prescription medicine that you might really need. Plant identification is critical. There's a lot of look-alike plants. I'll leave you with this thought. We have some nurses that live up the road from me, and they were making pokeberry jelly because they had heard poke salad was really good for you. Salad is S-A-L-E-T. Poke salad is the very early leaves of the poke bush. After maturity, poke leaves are poisonous. The berries are incredibly poisonous. So know what you're cooking up, know what you're doing. Don't, if you're not absolutely sure, anise and licorice will neutralize high blood pressure medicine. Don't have a stroke. But there are some really good books that look at herbal interactions with prescription medicine or existing conditions, heart problems, cholesterol, things like that. Be careful.
Mhm.
If you see it on the
Right.
ground, don't necessarily eat it.
Oh.
Okay.
Well, thank you, Halina. This was very interesting, and good luck in the Ozarks.
It'll be fun. Come see me.
I will. I'm
All right.
coming soon.
All right. Catch you later.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Join us next week when we will have what we were supposed to have this week, but we had, again, some technical problems. We're going to Body Oils, New York, where there are over 2,000 different blends of oils, a lot of which can be used magically. And we're going to be blending oils, we're going to be dipping incense, and we're going to be talking about the magical use of oils with Chris. So come and see us next week on Mystical Ways with Paula Forrester. Thank you and good night.